started your subnet? How did you start? How did you find Bittensor, and what was your journey?
Can I first ask, like, how do I share the screen here? I don't actually have the possibility to screen share. It's going to be later.
There should be a button that has two squares and a line through it on a diagonal angle. So you can share your screen.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's over there. Yeah. Okay. So how did we get to the Bittensor community? Yeah, it happened like about 3 years ago. Previous to that, we were operating as market makers, like automated sort of high frequency market makers. And then FTX happened. And that meant that for like high frequency traders, the volumes went down. I mean, it was not only on FTX, you know. So then we kind of decided to go all into the Bittensor community, which we kind of already knew about, but just hadn't had the kind of the push to do that. And I think that was a triggering point. So we have like market making background, really, like a simulation background. So we kind of felt comfortable in the AI ecosystem because we were kind of using AI in combination with high frequency trading. So that's kind of was the sort of the trigger. And then yeah, we did some mining and stuff like that, and then decided to start developing the subnet.
Well, I definitely think that from my experience speaking to more than a handful of subnets now on Subnet Summer, that starting with mining before you create your own subnet is the best way to understand how to create a successful subnet, to definitely understand how a subnet works, but also to avoid anti-gaming and people exploiting the system. So that's really great that you started with that background, and so you got Subnet 79 as your slot. Do you want to just tell us in high level to someone that's completely new what is Subnet 79 and why did you choose to make this subnet? I understand you have a market making background.
Yeah. So currently, so first of all, I mean, about 2 months ago, we changed the name from Taos to Matrix for the reason that we wanted to make it explicit that we were moving from the sort of the sandbox simulation environment into developing a real exchange. And the real exchange is basically made for DTAL alpha tokens, right? So that's kind of our goal here, to do a DTAL alpha token exchange, and the miners then serve the purpose of trading over there as well as in the sandbox environment. So we still keep the sandbox environment, but we also then have the real exchange. Like Nasdaq and these guys, they have sandbox for testing algorithms first for the members, and then they go to the live trading after everything is fine. So we have both then. So essentially, our goal is to do state-of-the-art exchange with market structure that would match the characteristics of DTAL alpha token market, which is a little bit less liquid than maybe New York Stock Exchange or something of that sort. So you have to keep in mind that when developing such an exchange, you are putting certain structures in place that will help those, especially with larger amounts of tokens, to trade fluently, so that there will be less friction. So I think that's kind of what we are currently doing on top of the simulation sandbox that we already have, which is already very elaborated sandbox.
Amazing. And yeah, if I know you said you were going to share your screen, that would be great. for today. Something that I wanted to understand is, so I understand that a lot of subnets are trying to get onto exchanges such as MEXC. I think one of them, there was discussions around Coinbase, or if there are some subnets on there. What's the advantage of us using the Matrix exchange versus a centralized exchange? Is it, for example, would it be that we can still make an effect on the tau emissions, whereas on a centralized exchange, you can't?
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's like two main points here. First of all, I mean, when we are designing the exchange, we can decide then what the structure of that exchange is. So meaning that what kind of order types exist. You know, if you go to MEXC or something like that, you accept that they have certain rules. You put limit orders, you put these kind of orders. You do not have, for instance, the type of data that we are then providing, which is, you know, probably we get into that later, which is sort of the market by order, very detailed, fine-grained data. So there's kind of limitations on those exchanges typically that would not, in our view, match the sort of the characteristics of the of the detail alpha token market. So we intend to innovate really on that structure so that it would be more specifically focused on such a little bit less liquid market. So that's the first thing. So the advanced order types, advanced microstructure. The second is obvious kind of if you're on Bittensor, then you have miners, right? Miners that get rewarded for mining. And then we are intending to incentivize them, of course, to trade in the real exchange, which means that they can provide liquidity at times of need, because we are doing kind of certain, you know, systems that incentivize them to be on the market even at the time of, you know, crashes or, you know, high turbulence, right? So essentially, it's providing incentive to be on the market even at the roughest times, which is kind of needed to keep the market stable. So MEXC and these guys, they wouldn't necessarily want to do that because the protocol of Bittensor then automatically supports this kind of activity through, of course, the subnet getting more emissions and therefore the miners getting better rewarded. So the higher sort of our matrix price would be, the higher also the mining rewards would be, therefore the more stable the market would be. So it's kind of that flywheel in operation, which would not be easily achieved, at least on MEXC or kind of centralized exchange of that kind, because they wouldn't have the protocol behind it. Hopefully that's...
I don't know if I don't understand fully, but is the difference between yourself and MEXC at this point in time, is it liquidity, and is that where stability comes from, or is it from somewhere else?
Yeah. So imagine that you're a miner, you're doing the trading algorithm, and it happens to be providing liquidity to markets. Mm-hmm. So even if you would be losing in your market making activity, like P&L, your profit and loss would be negative, right? You'd be still getting rewarded if you are the best or among the best of the miners. So as long as the mining rewards are bigger than the P&L that you are sort of, that would be negative, you're still providing, you have incentive to provide liquidity, right? You're still incentivized to trade through the protocol. So a MEXC or this kind of thing, the market makers would stop trading if the P&L is negative, right? So they would basically just vanish. If there's a market crash, they would have to make a decision like just leaving the market, or if they are like designated to do that, they may have to do that. They may have to be there, but then they will, you know, suffer significant losses because there's nobody to keep them sort of mining rewards, right? So they will likely just exit the market at the time of need, like happened like in 1987, you know, for instance, the kind of famous stock market crash, basically then the market makers just kind of left. And, if the market makers that are providing most of the liquidity leave, then you can imagine that, there's not enough liquidity to stand the pressure from the sell side, let's say. So it is this protocol that allows the miners to stay in the market. And that's kind of the main difference, among those kind of advanced features that we are putting into the exchange.
Thank you for that clarification. So in that case, the mainstream users that are going to come on to detail in the future that don't know about this space yet, should we be concerned about them using investing into subnets via centralized exchanges?
No, I mean, I think any trading anywhere is beneficial. There's most likely going to be arbitrage between the exchanges, right? So that the prices will stabilize around the kind of the fair value. Of course, we are attempting to put features that attract then certain type of traders at least to use our system. So which currently we are envisioning that they would be directed to us like a bigger players than the retail guys. So by which I mean like funds or whales or such that have a big portfolio, then they want to rebalance that, for instance. And that's apart from like maybe MXC, because they might be serving more like the retail guy that trades just for liquidity needs and maybe speculates on the price of the asset, but they don't actually necessarily know the value of the asset as well, or they kind of it's kind of noise trading. It's just kind of somebody buys and somebody sells. But if you have like big players and they decide to sell or buy, they are much more likely to move the market. And then this is the kind of type of player that interests us. First of all, because it's obviously better business for us because of the transaction costs, but also because if you want to stabilize some kind of market, you have to serve this type of clientele. And typically what would happen like sort of in regular markets, like in stocks and all that, they would create like a dark pool in the sense that you kind of match, like, it's like an OTC market, so that you can match the big players. But then the problem is that then that's out of the view, right? So you cannot do the OTC deal somewhere else and not kind of in a lit market. And then that's not good either, because that doesn't really reveal the information to others. So I think there's value in providing services to the bigger players, because they, first of all, they move the market, most of it, and you don't want to have that necessarily that OTC happening outside of the view. And then, yeah, that's the type of thing that most likely would separate us from Nexi and others. But I think all the exchanges have the kind of a clientele and attraction points, like somebody is doing a very beautiful user interface, making this and this easy, so they might want to concentrate on that. From our perspective, we first do the API approach, so we are serving the miners first, right? So it starts with the miners, and then when things are ready, then we expect that those bigger players with sort of a maybe portfolio rebalancing needs would enter into that. Of course, anybody could enter, but I think that's the kind of approach that we have, at least for now.
And just so I understand, what's the incentive for miners to move on from where they are now into your system, and then what's the incentive for the whales to move into your system?
Yeah, so whales and bigger players, we are doing order types and structure that it will make convenient for them to trade those bigger amounts without moving the market and kind of having to execute with a complicated algorithm on their own and so forth. It will be like with less friction. So it's kind of a service, like with the different order types and all that. So the bigger players should be attracted by that. Miners, of course, want to have mining rewards, and they can have the mining rewards plus the P&L, right? So if you are good in trading, like doing automated trading algorithms, and especially AI driven trading algorithms that are able to act on intraday level, so that are quite actively playing. So now I have to make sure that this is understood. So in our simulations and in our trading competition, we are focused on intraday trading. So it's not like let's hold the position for a couple of days and then sell, and what is the P&L, what is the risk. It is focused on active trading. So the active trading then directly goes towards the market making or some kind of statistical arbitrage strategy. And then in the simulation framework that we have, they already are doing like very active trading algorithms. And I think most of them are liquidity providing, but it is not like required that they have to be liquidity providing. They can be just like taking signals, but as long as the signals are frequently happening. So for instance, if the limit order book is somehow in imbalance, typically people use that as some sort of signal, or anything can be taken as a signal from the data set that we are then making possible to have. So then you are having AI algorithms actually racing against each other. So then you have like AI driven very active trading and AI driven market making from the miner perspective. And I think that's the future in any case. You are basically having even a large language model based trading algorithms that basically do all of the liquidity provision and basically the price revelation. So the traders then, if you are a retail trader, you just kind of you are maybe happy that the transaction costs are smaller because the spread will be getting smaller if it's a very competitive market. So the retail guy is happy if the market is stabilizing, because they can liquidate and trade based on their own signals with less cost. And then the bigger guy is happier because they can find the liquidity easier. So it's kind of all of them should be made happier, like the miners and the big guys and the retail guys in this kind of stable environment. But that's kind of the challenge here, is that most of the detail market is, of course, illiquid. There's really interesting projects in that. And then we would like to see more money to pour into that universe. But you cannot maybe ask for like bigger funds to enter it if they're going to see like very, very high volatility and very hard to exit when they need to, right? So it's going to be complicated for them to maybe invest in something because they can lose like minus 50% in a day or two. And then the friction or the transaction cost from rebalancing the portfolio is quite high in that sort of environment. So they would like to see more stable markets. So it's kind of a necessary, in our view, to attract capital into the detail market that would be coming outside from like bigger funds. So that you have like a stable environment as possible. Of course, that doesn't mean that if there's something like Templar does this and that the price would not jump. Sure, it should jump to the right fair valuation immediately, right? Because it's an efficient market. So you don't want to stop that happening, but the kind of unnecessary volatility that is basically due to maybe market manipulation or just based on the fact that there's not enough liquidity there to basically trade any significant amount. That's going to prevent, other, funds to enter in that space. I think that's kind of the service to the Bittensor community that we see with this project.
Thank you for that explanation and clarification. I now have a better idea of like what the incentive is, and it makes sense on the retail side because if you're trading in and out that day, you could lose a lot just each time you're trading in and out. And on the whale side, you need liquidity to trade on your side. So that definitely makes sense to me. Did you want to share your screen, show me a bit more about the simulations, or did you want me to ask some questions from the community now?
Yeah, I could share. Let me see. But I can take the questions at this point if you want to. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, we can do some questions now. We'll do two. There's two questions now, and then if you show us after, that would be awesome. So the first one was from Cowis. He said, "How has miner participation trended since the rebrand to Matrix early 2026, and what changes in incentives or tooling have driven any recent increases or drops?" I think he's talking about the alpha price.
Let me see. Is this on the chat?
Yeah, on the chat, on the Matrix chat by Cowix.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. It has been, it was the same. Actually, what we were a little bit worried about was the burning that we had to sort of increase, because many other subnets were using 100% burn. So we also had to increase that from near zero to higher. But that didn't seem to kind of disturb them that much. So I don't think that's kind of nothing has really changed. We have a lot of miners, and that has not affected it. I would say that when we would launch the actual exchange, then we will see, what the participation is like, because currently what the miners are doing still is to operate in the sandbox environment. So they're still operating in the sandbox. It basically means that we have currently 88 simulation paths that look realistic from perspective of limit order books, and that miners are trying to maximize the return and minimize the risk while trading. So they're competing against each other in this simulated sandbox environment. So nothing has really changed in that perspective. In the last 2 months, because the idea is still the same what they're currently doing. So we will see then when they eventually switch. Well, it's not complete switch, because we have like a two-layer approach here. So we will keep part of the money rewards going to the sandbox environment miners, and then a majority of the rewards will be distributed to the real exchange trading operation, right? So it is not like complete switch even in that case. Those that like the sandbox environment and practice their trading algorithms in the simulation environment can still do it, and they will get rewarded. And then those that basically want to go to the real trading world, they will get higher rewards, but it comes with the risk of course, losing actual money. So it's two-layered approach. So it's not like complete on-off switch in that sense, if that explains that. So why we want to do this is, So why we want to do this is basically just kind of make sure that some people will stay in the simulation environment, because we think that it's very, very, very cool environment, and it helps them to prepare for the actual trading world.
Thank you for explaining that. There was another question that came through from Karis Oki. He said, for someone wanting to start mining on Subnet 79, what hardware compute requirements are realistic, and what programming languages or frameworks do you see miners using most successfully? Maybe in this case, you do want to show us the sandbox, or give us a bit of a view while explaining this.
Yeah, I mean, it totally depends what kind of algorithms they are using. Some apparently use very, very simple algorithms. So we don't exactly know what they are, but definitely not everybody is using like complicated AI algorithms. So it is probably sufficient at this point to devise somewhat simple algorithms and deploy them. We have also given out templates, our own, to use. Just very recently, we released one, like which we called reverse engineering one, which is free to take and start mining. And the variety of the trading algorithms is quite high. And we would expect that there will be more and more like really truly AI driven, maybe even large language model driven, algorithms. So I don't think the requirements are that high at all at this point. So there is a toolbox that you can go and see what currently the miners are doing. So it's at address, I can write it down. It's toolbox, simulate trading, and then you can go to the dashboard, which is matrix simulate trading. So those two basically give you an idea what the different UIDs are doing. And then you will understand that if you go, for instance, to this ladder matrix simulate trading, you to the dashboard, you will see these 88 simulation paths over there. So you will see that the UIDs compete not only like one price path and one limit order book, but 88 of them. And then the ones that are the best in average sense are the winners. But you can basically see in the toolbox, who is trading with whom. So of course you can, you can get some insight like what they might be using, right? But currently it is not an open race. So in the sense that they would have to reveal their algorithm. So we don't know exactly what they are using. It is intended that when the matrix exchange opens, then we will keep that as a closed race, so that the algorithms that are competing are not revealed to public. But then the ones that are on the simulation side, the sandbox side, that's currently intended to be open race, in the sense that we expect that the best ones are then going to be sort of those that are performing the best, and they're going to be copied, and it's going to be a race on an open race basis. So again, there's this diversification to the sandbox environment and to the real exchange, and they will likely use different type of algorithms. Although if it works in the open race, it's possible that it's going to work in the closed race. But the closed race, of course, maybe it's more interesting for actual traders, because they can keep the IPR. And they don't have to reveal that to anybody else. We don't know that. Our toolbox will be giving some insight, then what is actually then actually happening. But I think that's there's another question. Should I answer these questions as well? Or?
Do you want me to read it out? So I'm just going to read out this for people that are listening later on. We outlined 2 revenue streams in recent discussions: live exchange fees and sales of high fidelity simulated data. What's the rough split you're targeting long term, e.g. 60-40 fees versus data? And how will the revenue be recycled? Buybacks of alpha/tau, dev, funding, miner, bonuses, or a mix?
Okay, so this is about the 2 revenue streams.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. So Yeah, so the idea is that the exchange, the live exchange, is operating as a normal exchange, which means that it is taking some kind of transaction fees. That's obvious. So whenever somebody trades, we would be making business out of that transaction. And since I say that we would like to prefer like larger customers, we are intending to, put some kind of tier levels in there, so that some more advanced features may cost a little bit more, but they provide easier access, and you get traded with less friction. So it's going to be tiered to some extent, and then of course the data side is, for instance, from the toolbox. You can see that we have intended to open up like sales through that, so that if you are interested in the simulated data sets for AI algorithm fine tuning, then we are able to sell that either as big chunks, let's say to hedge funds or funds, or with micro payments. So you might be able to kind of get 1 minute if you want to, or 5 minutes or 1 day, but you would be able to buy in smaller chunks, for instance around some black swan event. So it's kind of intended to be two-layered. The real exchange makes money from the transaction costs mainly, and then the simulation side makes data sales and tools that are interesting for improving your trading algorithms. So that's one of those two main revenue streams that we have been envisioning here, and we are working towards that. So the toolbox is already getting more and more interesting tools, and then the transaction side, we will make a tiered structure. For instance, if you hold basically our alpha token enough, then you get better rates than if you would not hold our alpha token. That's an obvious thing that's also applied in centralized exchanges of any kind, so that you are incentivized to be invested in the subnet, and not sell the alpha immediately either. So there's what is the rough split? Yeah, I mean the buybacks. Yeah, I mean I think I've said before that we will definitely use some of the revenue to buybacks from the exchange revenues. So most likely it's in the range of 25% to 50%, and then the rest would be geared towards like marketing and scaling up, programming new features and so forth. So it's kind of roughly speaking, we are talking about that. So there's definitely going to be buybacks from the revenue streams of the exchange, and then the rest, about 50% or maximum 75%, will be towards like scaling up the operation. So that's kind of the mixture of how the revenue are going to be used. Yeah, so I think that's sort of
yeah, that definitely answers his revenue question. What exactly is DIS? I know it's short for dynamic incentive structure, and why is it different to the standard incentives that traditional markets would be using, such as NextC for this case?
Yeah, so we have a paper on the dynamic incentive structure, shortly this. It is basically a very simple idea. but the technical implementation is not straightforward. But I will not go to the technical details here. The basic idea of the this is that at times of trouble, when markets start, for instance, crashing, like I said, then the makers either want to leave or they will just trade as little as possible, but they don't want to be on the making side at that point. So this is designed so that if the market is in imbalance, so that there is imbalance between takers and makers, let's say in this case there's too few makers, then those makers are given rebates, and then the takers are paying for those rebates. So that if a taker is taking liquidity at the time of a, let's say, market crash, that there's not enough makers, the market is in imbalance, then the taker will have to pay more, but then that will directly go to the maker side, not to the exchange, right? Or vice versa, if it's upside down. So for some reason there's not enough makers, but there's a lot of takers, then you want to incentivize the other way around. So kind of sometimes it's the case that you have too much makers. It's like everybody's doing market making, or basically providing liquidity, but the price doesn't move, while there's clearly a signal that the price should be higher or lower, and we need to find takers to move the market to the right fair price. So then it's upside down situation that then the makers will pay to the takers. So, but it is outside of the exchange in the sense that the exchange doesn't take that money. It's just basically exchanged between the makers and takers. So basically between the miners or the transaction. And in this case, this is between the miners. So it is a little bit maybe a technical thing to explain, but the idea is very simple, to provide basically liquidity in times of need, and then vice versa, take liquidity when there's a good reason to do so. So if all of the miners are just doing market making, that's not necessarily good for the market, because there's basically it's just a flat line, right? And if something happens, then the price doesn't move at all. So you want to have takers as well. It's not the case that all the taking is always negative. So the DC is basically providing like a mechanism to do this in a smart fashion. And we have a paper on that. So it's on our sort of old website, which is called taos.im. So you're able to find it from there. If you are interested in the details, what the DIS is doing. But yeah, I think this is kind of this is sort of what I could say at this point on that. Okay.
Well,
okay.
There was two questions that came in. I'm going to ask the newest one just because he hasn't asked a question yet. He said, what are the next major milestones on the roadmap beyond current simulations, especially around the future exchange experiments, and any plans to bridge simulated strategies toward real detail or live market execution?
Yeah, so I mean, the milestones are basically that we first need to get this exchange out, and it will be API driven first for miners to partake. We are currently seeking collaborations on that with bigger real exchanges in centralized and potentially also decentralized side. So I believe that some of those will be materializing. Then we clearly want to do a user interface for that, like that would be attractive, and that's nowadays not that difficult to do anymore. But what we want to do over there is we want to also innovate, because we have that special data set, which is sort of the deep limit order book data. We want to display that and make sure that the users will also understand the special features of this exchange, So then it will be, after the launch, it will be about also attracting users in terms of the usability. And then, yes, the simulations are going to be fine-tuned. The sandbox simulations are going to be fine-tuned towards this data alpha token trading. So that's probably it's going to take a while because the data alpha token market is quite illiquid. But I think we're just going to focus on the top liquid names in that fine-tuning process first, and then when the others would be becoming more and more liquid, it is then possible to start matching the characteristics between the simulations and the real market conditions in that market. But basically, the simulations provide like a good benchmark, a testing crowd for your algorithms that you can test the logic. You can fine-tune very complicated trading algorithms using AI. You can basically do predictive algorithms for so-called black swans, like crashes and all that. This is all enabled by the simulations because there's so massive amount of data over there. So that would not be possible if you just have like one historical data set, like one, I don't know, Apple price, right? Or one Bitcoin price. So you would not be able to use AI efficiently and in a predictive manner. So our sandbox environment and the sandbox environment data then allows to pick those signals that might predict the next crash. And then that comes down to the main clients that we want to serve, which is kind of the bigger funds and bigger players like whales that would lose the most if the market crashes significantly, right? So yeah, it is the intent to match the characteristics of the detail market, but in any case, many of those signals and predictive mechanisms are similar, even if the data are not like exactly the same. So you will see certain characteristics in a limit order book that will start to signal that, okay, there's too much pressure on here, or there's these characteristics over here, and then these can be picked up by AI methods, and it can help in risk management. So that's kind of the story behind here, shortly, if that helps.
I think that answers his question. For validators running efficient C++ setups, as mentioned, what uptime hardware specs and scoring weight do validators need to reliably contribute and earn meaningful rewards right now?
Okay, so the validators running efficient C++ setups?
Yeah.
Can't remember right now what we actually have, so I would have to answer that later on, to be honest.
That's fine. I actually had a question for you. We were speaking earlier on, and you mentioned to me before the call, you said something about L3 MBO data. Can you explain what this is in really simple terms?
Yeah. So the L3 MBO, it comes from the word from level 3 market by order. It is basically the most fine-grained data of limit order books available. So Coinbase, for instance, have that. Couple of others have that. Kraken has that. It means that all the messages that the traders send in and receive are in our database. So if you are putting in an order, we know who put it, how much, to what level, and if it's canceled. So basically anything that is a message is recorded. And then you have this very fine-grained understanding of how the limit order book is constructed. Not only that, like the price and how much volume there is at each level, but the fine-grained dynamics of it, that how much from this trader and how much did this trader cancel, and so forth. So you have like the complete picture of how the limit order book has been constructed. So then this dynamics is something that provides information to, let's say, AI, because it's not only like, here's the trade price, or here's the top 5 levels with the prices and volumes. You actually see everything within those levels. So it's like the most fine-grained data available, which is the sort of holy grail of financial market data that NASDAQ and such exchanges have used for decades already. But it's not so common in crypto, where they typically use what is called L2, and that doesn't have the fine-grained capability of seeing those fine-grained details of the limit order book. And what we have done in our simulation environment, and also what the real exchange will have, is this L3 MBO capability, so that there will be a lot of messages, of somebody sending an order, canceling this, and so forth, but it's a complete picture. And why we are doing this is simply because we believe that there's a significant amount of information in there, so that in the age of AI, you need to have such information. Otherwise, you will be basically, you are fine-tuning a model that doesn't actually utilize this valuable information base. So it is basically just the most fine-grained data available that the AI algorithms want to see. And then, paired that with the number of simulations that we run at the same time, currently 88. So then you have this fine-grained limit order book data, and you have currently 88 of those concurrently running. So then AI actually has 88 times all of those limit order books. So then you start to understand that even just like one day worth of data recorded from all of those 88 simulations comes with the advantage of having AI algorithm basically fine-tuning itself, like quickly to something usable. While if you would have like Apple price or Bitcoin price for 1 or 2 weeks or 10 years, the market structure has changed. So the data that is in the past is not useful anymore. So the only way you really kind of use AI in this sense to predict something, you have to simulate, because you don't have the data set. You don't have 88 simulations of your life. That's why we call it matrix, because it's from the movie Matrix, basically, where you have alternative realities. So we live in this reality, but we might as well live in another reality, right? And so that these would be a little bit different. So the matrix name comes basically from the matrix of these simulations, alternative realities. Hopefully that explained a little bit of the naming and also the L3 MBO. It's not really that difficult. One can look up the L3 MBO from, let's say, CME, Chicago Mercantile Exchange. They have a pretty good explanation of the details of that.
Yeah, thank you for that explanation. I'll ask you another question, just bearing the time that we have left. Traditional HFT firms guard their simulation engines closely. How do you see open source / open competition aspects of Matrix creating an edge over closed quant shops, especially for discovering novel liquidity mechanisms or incentive designs that centralized teams might miss?
Yeah, I mean, that's of course that question could be asked to, I don't know, to Microsoft or whatever. I mean, we live in this open source environment right now. Essentially, you have advantage when you are just keeping your own IPR and you don't disclose that. You do have that, and then traditionally the quantitative shops, of course, keep that, and it's very highly secretive stuff, and I think that will continue. But at the same time, you have these open source AI algorithms and platforms and services that become more and more intelligent all the time. So it is going to be interesting to see, which one will be actually sort of winning the race. Whether the sort of the closed IPR is significant enough, or if the race is going to be actually on the sort of the hardware and speed and optimization side, and not necessarily the idea side, which is a little bit similar to the high frequency trading world. What has happened? So basically, they typically use very, very simple algorithms, but the guy with the sort of the speediest setup will win. So what we do in the matrix is we allow both of these to happen. So the sandbox environment would have the open race, right? So then it would be open race, so you have to kind of disclose that. But you can move to the closed race, which is then in the real exchange side, and then you don't have to reveal the IPR. So it's going to be also interesting to see, like, are those open algorithms going to be competitive in the closed race or not? So I don't have like a real answer to that, but certainly it is the case that financial markets are going to be more efficient and competitive by the use of AI, like everything else, right? It's going to be insanely difficult for like normal people just to come with their sort of idea, unless they have another way to compete, like in terms of speed, hardware, connectivity, or some very, very simple minded idea that actually then works. It's not impossible in my opinion, but it will come harder because of the interconnections between the exchanges, and then the AI is sort of hopefully stabilizing all of that, so that instead of having huge manias and panics, the AI would be able to stabilize it, because you would have like less kind of the human touch on that, the less animal spirits on that. So I hope and believe that the open sort of a race move it would be able to stabilize things. Of course, you can say that, okay, now there's this open race, and then everybody starts to use the same algorithm, and then it actually gets crazier. But then if somebody is doing that, then of course there will be another one that will counterweight that. So that if both of them are AI driven, let's say large language model, the stuff that we are working on, which I think will be super exciting, considering also 10+ success recently. So we will be revealing stuff on the large language model side on Matrix. I believe that those models will be hard to beat unless you kind of really find some other advantage in addition to the intelligence side. And then it will be about resources as well. Who is able to do it quickest, right? If you have like extremely complicated model and it's very, very good performing, are you able to do that in like microseconds? Are you able to execute and get the logic done like in microseconds? How much does it take? Milliseconds? Seconds? So it will be like optimization of speed. And then you come back to the sort of the matrix idea that I was explaining a little bit, which was that we want to create the market structure such that it allows certain competition to be had, but not like crazy stuff. Like we want to weed out certain manipulation tactics, and we want to use AI for surveillance and stabilize the market, so that the order types and all that the AI is then able to use. Because maybe in the end, everybody's using AI, so there's only AI bots, only miners exist. There's nobody else. Everybody's basically trading through an AI bot in a way. So those AIs have to have incentive mechanisms that keeps them in check. So if they do something stupid, they need to be not rewarded for doing that. So our goal, overall in Matrix, whether that will be open race or closed race, is to do incentive mechanisms that basically punish for AI algorithms that do stupid stuff or manipulate the prices, and then reward those that actually doing smart stuff and that is beneficial for the whole market. It's I think the whole Bittensor thing is about incentive structures. It's just, the whole thing is to create intelligence in incentive structure, so that when the AI will take over all over the financial markets, there's a police, there's a governance model, incentive model that keeps them in check. Otherwise, it's gonna go wild. So maybe that's not like direct answer, but those are kind of related thoughts on the open competition and closed one, because it's going to be down to the incentive mechanisms that we designed for the exchange, right? It is if we do that doubly, it will not be less stable. It will not be stable. But if we do them smartly, then it will stabilize. And I think what we currently have as incentive structure is already close to what we want to have, which is that mainly we want to incentivize risk management over kind of a poor profit and loss maximization, right? So if we would do incentive structure that whoever wins the most P&L, that will incentivize high speculation. Like, let's do that. It's kind of totally reckless kind of risk taking. But what we have put in the incentive structures is that you have certain amount of capital in the simulations, and you need to do smart things. You need to manage your risk, and that's what I think will keep the AI algorithms in check. And that's one of the core ideas of the Matrix Exchange in overall, that there's AI algorithms, sure, but the structure that we have put in place keeps them in check. Okay, so I think hopefully that sort of gives the general flavor of it.
Definitely think it does. I've got a closing question for you, which is, if Matrix does execute on this vision and all things go well, how important can this subnet be for the entire Bittensor system, ecosystem long term?
Well, I mean, obviously our answer is it's going to be super important. Whether it would be us or somebody else, I think it's super important to get the capital in to stabilize the whole markets. Not only focus on the top 5, 4, whatever, top 3 of the best performing subnets, but have more evenly distributed weights on the number of different subnets. That's what I think it could do, because then the capital could be distributed over many more, because they would be feeling more comfortable with having investment in them. Otherwise, there's a danger, in my opinion, that it will converge. Like in sort of typically would things converge in capitalism, if there's no really good governance model, it will converge to having like Apple or having Microsoft. Then you have top 5, and then the rest will be sort of kind of crap. I mean, this is the Pareto law, like the 80-20 rule, so that you only so the top 20 hold 80 of the hold capital, kind of that kind of ratio. So what we would like to do, of course, here is that we would like to distribute this capital, or help to distribute the capital more evenly, and then incentivize really these miners to provide this liquidity and provide this stability to the whole community. So the higher the values of Matrix would be, the bigger rewards there would be for the miners. So it's kind of this flywheel that would have a positive spin to it. So if you get more rewards for mining, then you are incentivized to do more mining, and providing more intelligence to do that, and then hence the more stable the market, and hence the more capital into the Bittensor community, and then you have more and more subnets that can have impact. Right now, I think there's a little bit danger, from my perspective at least, that the attention and the capital will be put in a couple of top ones. There's nothing really necessarily evil about that, but it's also very, very risky for the investors in my perspective. It's like if you hold on to the top 5 and then something happens in those top 5, like there always happens something, then that can come down like rapidly. And then you have like liquidation events, and that is basically driving the crashes, even in Bitcoin or even in gold or silver nowadays. So basically, extreme liquidity rush out of the system if it's concentrated in the top 5. So I think it's extremely important to kind of have a mechanism that would allow investment safely into more and more subnets.
Tommy.
Yes.
I don't know. Can you guys hear me clearly?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right. I was going through your GitHub. I was going through the Discord, and also I was checking the emissions, the price action of Subnet 79, and I think right now, Subnet 79 is the emissions are currently low. So what major milestones do you think right now Tommy and your team should focus on in the next let me say 2 months, that will attract, or let me say that will grow the reward in Subnet 77?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a good question. It's first of all, I mean, this week, tomorrow, we will have a new sales guy. And so it's not only going to be me. We have over 10 people in the team, but we need like marketing, sales. So we're gonna have a sales guy and a legal guy. So 2 guys are joining tomorrow. Then we're gonna increase, C++ and Rust development. So we're gonna accelerate certain developers in the exchange, so to get it out as soon as possible. So I think that's those 2 things, basically marketing, promotion, dealing with the message of this subnet is something very, very important. I also thank you guys, having the possibility to present here. I think it's a fairly complicated subnet, but in terms of financial market complexity, it's not really that unheard of. So I think our mission is to, in the next 1 or 2 months, is to provide new websites, new information in a visual format, put more emphasis on the sales, marketing, promotion overall, and then prepare to launch the beta version of the Matrix Exchange. I think that's obviously the biggest thing that we want to do. There's supportive functions that we have already done that are super interesting, but I can give them out as links into this chat. They include help to the miners, so that the miners can basically for free using our infrastructure, just holding our alpha token to mine our our subnet, for instance, or exchange the IPR of the trading algos with each other for a price. So it's kind of market for exchanging the trading algorithm logic, and there's other stuff like that this is supporting this. So put together, we have now released last week and this week, and in the coming couple of weeks, more and more stuff. But it does require somebody or some entities to visualize and tell the story in an attractive fashion. So we need to work on that. Our team consists of mainly of PhD guys and researchers and programmers. And although we are kind of skilled, I think we kind of maybe have been not focusing enough to the sales and marketing side, right? Maybe that's fair to say.
Right. Okay, thank you. When talking about, because the few things I heard concerning you guys major milestone in the next 2 months, you said something like marketing. You said working on the website and also
The exchange, the actual exchange, like the API and exchange for the actual exchange.
I think I said what exchange?
Yeah, so the matrix exchange that would actually then trade these detailed alpha tokens. So it's not simulation anymore. Then it's going to be the actual detailed alpha token trading through that exchange. So that's a major milestone when that is taking place. And then, like I said, it's mainly at first it's going to be miner driven through API, and then we allow other people to interact with that as well. But there's several innovations that we do within the next 1 or 2 months, and we have to be able to communicate that to the public in a simpler manner, so that they will understand the value of it. Because now they are maybe a little bit confused. Like, okay, you have a complicated product, seems cool maybe, but I don't necessarily understand all the details. So can you deliver the message in a way that I can understand easily? So it is product launch and communicating all the aspects. We have a lot of valuable software done already, and releasing more and more in the coming weeks.
Okay. Thank you. So, do you have you gotten people that can be able to relay this message out publicly? And when talking about marketing, are you just talking about posting on X, or actually meeting out to potential investors that can actually see the good in this subnet?
Yeah, I mean, we are being contacted. I wouldn't say like every day, but every week we get somebody to contact us in terms of investment. So those are in discussions. Then, like I said, there's exchanges that we discuss with, like partnerships or collaborations. And yeah, I mean, overall, it's going to be much more business-driven approach than the previous development cycle has been like. And then, like I said, tomorrow we get a new sales guy, a new legal guy. So I think those two, they are coming from crypto, and they all also know the Bittensor side from mining side. So they are not new in that sense into the community. I think that will be a great help. So that we would have a more balanced team. We have been focused so much on the development that and remember, it's C++ mainly, right? It is a difficult thing to do, right? It's not going to happen as easily as Python, but it has its own advantages. When you have C++ or Rust, C++ especially, then you are able to integrate with certain key players in the market, because they are using C++ as the default standard. So it is sort of necessary in this kind of a exchange setup that you have a serious programming language that is fast. You cannot do everything in Python.
Yeah, that's true. All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
No worries, thank you.
Thanks for jumping in there, Sydney, and asking some questions. And people are always welcome to jump in and ask questions via audio or type them into the group. So I appreciate that. Before we close this off, was there anything else you wanted to share with the community today?
Yeah, I mean, I would most likely, I will put some links to this chat that you can check out that are related to Matrix, and let you understand better what we are about. Now, we didn't go through the deck because there were so many good questions. I think this is good as well. But I will put the deck also available to our current website, which is basically this one here, and it will be renewed most likely in the next 2 weeks, and there will be much more information in there. But I will put the deck if you are interested in having a look at the deck, and basically goes through like what I was saying on this call, and then the visualizations of, let's say, the this, they are upcoming. We already have them. I mean, Claude is doing magical things, so it helps us quite a bit to do things fast in that side. So we will be having visualizations. So come to our Discord and follow us on X. There will be more interesting stuff coming, like in the next week or two. I think that's kind of the main message. And thanks everybody for supporting us this far. I know that it has been a little bit harsh time because we are sort of almost at the direct region all the time. But I hope and trust that will change. It's a good time to buy. Let's put it that way.
I think that's the right attitude, especially now that it seems like you guys are hiring more people. There's changes coming, and as well on top of that, I will if you send the deck to me, we can put that together in a post. So people have more visibility over that as well on X. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us today. We'll be cheering you on from the background, and we hope to have you come back again.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for that. Take care, guys.
All right. Take care.